Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of The Formula. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson. On The Formula, we break down and explore the elements of achievement from people from all kinds of different backgrounds, whether it's sports, dancing, business, singer-songwriting, all kinds of things. In this episode, I got to sit down with two good friends of mine, Adrian Brambilla and Scott Dix. In this episode, we talk about a lot of different things. We really go all over the place. It's a lot of fun. Adrian's background was he originally started out as a professional dancer. He was even featured in some of T-Pain's music videos, and he became a YouTube influencer, teaching people how to dance the robot. I know I can't do it, so it's really cool to see Adrian have a lot of success in that field. And Scott has had multiple businesses. He's really kind of a renaissance man. Don't throw anything at me for saying that, Scott. But, he's had a lot of success in a lot of different fields, including jiu-jitsu, improv, singing. He's just a really talented dude. Some of the things we talk about are with Adrian, how dancing led to his journey into entrepreneurship, how things that, some failures that you might have help you to learn how to do something different in the future, why passion drives your involvement in different things, and how passion doesn't necessarily lead to success. I thought this was an awesome episode. We shot it live. I think the sound turned out pretty well, but it was a lot of fun for me, and I really hope you have fun listening to it, but I hope you learn a few things as well. So without further ado, let's get this show started with Adrian and Scott. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Formula. My name is Trevor Carlson, and I will be your host this morning. Today, I have two guests with me, Scott Dix and Adrian Brambilla. Two really interesting guys, probably two of the more interesting guys that I know. We're just going to talk about the different types of hobbies and activities and things that they're involved in outside of their work. They're both very successful entrepreneurs, but that's not why they're here today. They're here because of what they do outside of the work hours. So, Adrian, you kind of shared a story with us the other night when we were having a couple beers. I'd like to kind of tee it up for you to kind of tell us a little bit about how your dancing career really led into you being an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having both of us here. It's very interesting. The world that I started in to get internet marketing was actually learning how to dance the robot. In college, I was always been kind of straight edge. I didn't really party or drink in high school, and in college, I wasn't about to go all crazy. So when everyone else was partying and drinking, I decided to be a really big nerd and go into a gym. So Friday night or Tuesday night, or for those crazy partiers who partied every night in college, I was there basically every day watching YouTube tutorials on how to do the robot by myself. And I did that for about 2 years. Then this really random opportunity happened where T-Pain put out an open call audition to send in a video. And anyone didn't have to be a professional dancer. I was basically a living room dancer, and I sent that video in, and for some, God's miracle, he ended up taking 30 people to go to a live audition. I went to the live audition, and then he was only supposed to take 2 people, and he ended up taking 10. And so my life changed from that day before to the day after of being a professional dancer going on a world tour. But what I was most fascinated by is when I started learning about T-Pain, and he's actually a very successful entrepreneur, was what I was more mesmerized by instead of being on stage and living that professional dancer life was this one time we were hanging out in Atlanta, and he just released a very naughty song called Reverse Cowgirl. And yeah, the song is not good. Don't listen to it. But what I was amazed by is he launched it right in front of our eyes, and in a matter of 10 minutes, he had 1 million downloads. So this is back in 2011. So I think the average iTunes song was 99 cents. So basically, I watched him make $1 million in 10 minutes. And that was the thing that I was most fascinated by, is how to build the tribe, the audience, and then to be able to release something and have so much traction so fast where you can make that much money so fast by providing value. And that kind of took off from everything. And I'm sure I don't want to hog the mic too much at the beginning, but I can dive into some of the other things I'm doing, and I'm stoked to be here. So we'll share all those stories.
Yeah, no need to be a mic hog, Adrian. Come on, we gotta let Scott have some time over here. So, Scott, you also have kind of really interesting, I don't even know what to call it, path. You have a very interesting mishmash of things that you're involved in. And you kind of shared some of this the other night, and we've shared some of these stories over drinks before. Do you kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the activities you've been involved in, maybe some of the highlight points or highlight reel of those things?
Sure. First of all, Adrian, if that's mic hogging, I thought it was pretty succinct. So I'm like, you guys are screwed now because you're in for a story time. So I think to put all this in context, I just kind of spin up. I got my little diagram of what I want to talk about here briefly. When I was younger, I also was not, when everybody else was drinking and partying, I did not do that. I didn't take that road. I had passions that lied elsewhere. And so I got involved with music in my teenage years, theater, a lot of things like that, and did that for a while. When I was 18, I decided that college was not the right thing for me. So I kind of struck out on my own, moved from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, and was fortunate enough by, it's one of those fall in a pile of shit, come out smelling like roses situations. Moving down was tough. I didn't really have any prospects. I had no skills. I had no training. I was just a guy, with a mishmash of experience as an 18-year-old, which, what does that count for? Not much. Somehow I landed a job as a music teacher at a small private school in Annapolis. And there's certainly a story to get to that as well. But I spent 4 years there, as a music teacher. So I was in education. I was able to leverage the skills that I had and sell the idea that I was capable of doing this job, and it was actually really great. We had a theater company. We did all kinds of things down there. It was really enjoyable. My wife and I started a theater company. She wasn't my wife at the time. And that was great. And we were actually making money in music, which, Adrian, dude, it's like, that's not a thing that happens a lot. And we were doing well with it. It was really great. My wife was a professional performer, and we were just doing the thing, right? So at some point along the line here, someone said, and I was actually offended at the time, but it was totally cool. They were like, you'd be a great used car salesman. Yeah, I know, right? And I'm like, what? Come on. But I realized that my theatrical background, this ability to improv and this ability to speak to people, which is part, upbringing and natural, my personality, and part training, is pretty valuable. And so I started transitioning through various other jobs, started a business, failed a business. It was a computer consulting thing. Eventually became a computer consultant, worked in the service industry, started selling environmental equipment, and learned about the sales process. And that's where things really changed for me. So being a part of a service business and then moving to a sales focused business, put everything into perspective. So then when I started my next business, I knew what I had to do every day, even though I didn't have any work. I didn't have any contracts. I had no clients. I knew exactly what to do. So, it was all these different little skills that kind of came together. And all the while I was playing guitar and, interested in the martial arts, and we renovated houses and did all these fun things that we enjoyed doing, and kind of living our life, in a very vivid way on one hand, and trying to apply some of that stuff to business. And it all kind of melded together to get to that point, which was when I was 27. And then there's another 10 or 11 years after that. So
when it comes to having these side projects, passions, other things that you're involved in, we were talking about Gary Vee earlier, and I like some of his stuff. One of the things I've heard him and other people say, though, is that you should be really focused on your thing, and everything else should just take a back seat or go away. It doesn't sound like you guys have bought into that, and I don't think it's really negatively affected your entrepreneurial ventures. Did you guys have any thoughts on that type of mindset, or why you sound like you disagree with it?
So I actually do agree with that, but I agree with it in microcosm. So there's an immense amount of focus that's required to get really good at something in a short amount of time. And I feel like that, I think that's, if I'm right about Adrian too, that's one of his skills. He can take something and process it. I know I do, and kind of get a handle on it, but you have to invest. It takes time. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus to get really good at something, or at least competent at something in a short amount of time. And so it's those little micro bursts of focus that are required that fit into the bigger picture.
I agree on both sides. So if I look at numbers of stuff I've done, so I have 3 YouTube channels combined are 750,000 subscribers. One's about dance, one's about fitness, one's about parkour. And then I have around 6 Shopify stores selling random stuff. Like I've sold Pokeballs and scaled that and sold that store. I've sold $18,000 worth of pink beanies and all these other things. It starts with a passion, and then the foundation is I'm really good at. I'm just a nerd. I'm really good at online marketing, looking at numbers and seeing if something works or not. And I have a formula on if I'm trying something, when do I say this is not going to work, and I cut back. So my passion is how I first get interested in seeing if I want to pursue something, but the foundation of knowledge that I have, and then the implementation and the experience is because I've lost a lot of money online is the truth, and I failed a lot. So I learned the hard way, but now I'm at a point where I can see like, oh, that's cool, I want to try this. And then I now have the knowledge and infrastructure to try it on a basically a bootstrapping level and try to take it from there. And I have lots of great case studies. I have lots of failed case studies, and maybe we'll even dive into those later. But I think it's totally cool to be multi-passionate. We're not one-dimensional as a human being, so having multi-passion is good. I also think from a logical and business sense, if you want to take a passion and turn to a business, you have to definitely be educated and be realistic as what skill sets do you need to have. Do you have those skill sets? Do you have in your network to where those are your weaknesses? Can you fill that with a person to replace that and see if it's working there? And then also the ultimatum, when is this not going to work out? Should this really just be a hobby? And one of the, if we screw all the business side of it, if you really love something and then you want to turn to a business, and as soon as that starts to feel like work, that's a big red flag for me. It's like I'm trying to force it, right? So I think those are some things to think about.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up. I mean, I agree with all of that. The key word there is passion. I mean, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, you meet some people and they're so kind of baffled as to why, I get involved with so many things. Like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do all these things? It's because I'm passionate about them. I'm passionate about a lot of things in life. And, I think it's very rewarding for me to follow through on those passions and kind of see them come to fruition in some way. Sometimes they're short-lived. You just want to try something out, test it, see what's up. And if you can recognize the more quickly you can recognize that it's not working out and exit, the better off you're going to be, because there is such a thing as forcing it. And I have done that, and it's not a good thing, pushing through, grinding, and that's not passion anymore. That's grit. And it's nice when you can combine both and make them work. It's not cool when you do the grit only model, and it can be a bit of a grind there. But just kind of side story about that. So my kid sister, who I love, came to me a couple of years ago, and she was super excited because she's really good at baking. Like anything that goes in the oven she's like a wizard, right? And so she comes to me, she's like, all my friends tell me that I should open a bakery because I'm so good at baking. And I said, I love my sister, but I was like, do your friends hate you? Because, my God, why would you open a business and kill the thing that you love? Like, find someone who wants to open a bakery, let them run the business, and you do the baking. And knowing my kid sister, I just don't feel like she has a passion for business, because that's one thing I think that a lot of people maybe don't see when they're going into something. They may love dance or love music or love web development, whatever it is, these things that we love. But when you start that on your own, a huge portion of your time is actually doing business, not the thing that you love. And so if you don't love doing business, if you don't have a passion for that too, and kind of get into that process, and that doesn't mean you have to love accounting and you have to love doing financial projections and all these different kinds of things. It just means that you have to enjoy doing business as well, because man, that will drag you down like an anchor. If you don't enjoy that and you neglect it and you just want to do the thing, well, then you're missing out on all the rest, the sales process and the actual doing business side of things, which is so important.
Sounds like it's important to also find someone to fill that side. If you like to be a baker, find someone to be the business owner and you handle the baking, right?
And I don't think it's not that you can't be both, but I think it's really important to recognize inside yourself where your passions lie. And if it isn't in doing business, then you probably need to find someone who can help you do that.
So I want to share a real story of a failure that I have that still haunts me to this day, because I see it almost every single day as I get out of my house. And the very first e-commerce store I launched, it was right when I got done touring with T-Pain. I was a senior in college, and I launched my very first e-commerce store, and it was geared towards a for-purpose company called Dance Saves Lives, where the money that I was going to sell through the clothing, I'd go and teach dances at places that can't afford it. And fast track a couple years, like we did do international workshops. But the very first thing I did, because I was so passionate about this project, is I, with the money that I earned from T-Pain, I basically spent $2,500 in clothing, because I was like, oh, I gotta have sweatshirts, I'm gonna have sweatpants, tank tops, man, I'm gonna sell like all this really cool snapbacks. It's gonna be awesome. I made the snapbacks, like I created my designs, my wife helped me, and I was so stoked. And so I bought all these boxes worth of stuff. And then when I had the stuff, I put them online and they didn't sell. And today I still have like 3 huge boxes full of all this like swag and sweatpants. So after this is over, I'm gonna try to sell you some sweatpants, because I still have them. But it just goes to show like how much I didn't know. I was just so passionate. I was blindly passionate about this. Where like now, like last month, through data research, I found a trending product. I don't know if people who are listening to this, they heard of the dad bag, but I was literally the first marketer to sell the dad bag online. In the first 48 hours, I sold over like 200 units and made like $5,000 worth of sales. And it's like what I know now versus what I know then. It's like I have a passion, I have interest, but I have all the experiences learned from failure and just so much education now. So it's like passion is great to start the fuel in the fire, but passion doesn't lead to success. You need so much more than that.
So I feel kind of bad a little bit, because as you guys were like doing cool shit, I was probably drinking in college. Actually, I feel like my college career was like drinking, going home and playing like the most difficult computer games possible with like tons of analytics. I just love diving into that stuff, and then reading. So not textbooks, of course, because why would you read textbooks when you're going to college when you can read free books from the library? So you guys said a lot about grit versus passion, and I want to dive into that a little bit more. I have a whole laundry list of things now after you guys just kind of riff there for a bit, but I feel like that this point where people try to do things that they love, or they try to force themselves to do something that they don't love. How do you tell the difference when like sometimes you're doing something that you love and it's kind of hard to do for a while and it's just like a growing period, and then other times it's just like this is not a good fit for you. This is not the path you need to be on. How do you tell the difference?
I was thinking about that because, knowing that we were going to sit down and talk today, and I feel that being able to identify those things, like Adrian talked about, you having the experience or I don't know. I think that's a skill that you can hone. Some people might get there more quickly than others. It took me a while, to get there, but I think that it comes down to, I think of it a little bit like in a friendship, right? So if we think of our business dealings as friendships, when it starts feeling like you don't want to spend time with that person anymore, or your gut is telling you that something's wrong with that person, but you keep hanging out with them and you keep doing that, it kind of gets worse and worse, or a relationship that that you should have exited. It's a similar yuck. That feeling, right, on a personal level. And I think that applies, we have to be less analytical. Sometimes we just look at the numbers. Sometimes we just look at the thing and the result that we want, and we forget, I forget, that I'm also a human being. I'm a person. And human beings have a finite amount of resources, energy, to be able to put into something. Right? We talked about, you only have so many fucks to give, right? And so you have to start being very selective about where those are placed. So inside the business world, you're kind of thinking about it like that. So if you're in something that feels wrong or doesn't bring you, I don't know if the word is joy. I don't know, Adrian, you had better words than what I'm saying. But if it's not bringing you joy, or it's not putting you in a place where you are flourishing, or in a place where you think you can flourish, but it's dragging you down instead, then you're probably doing the wrong thing, and you need to take a hard look at maybe what changes you need to make.
I don't really have any follow-ups, so that was a pretty good answer. So we've talked a lot about like getting involved in different things, hobbies, business, and I'm wondering, if you were to start something new just from scratch, you had no experience in it, how would you do that? Like, what would your process look like getting started on a new hobby or skill today?
When I start something new, I for sure will look at some general data. And to drop a specific tool, Google Trends is a really cool tool that you can spend hours just looking up to see if your passion, if there's other people that also have the same passion. You can also check to see if that passion is on the decline, or if there's more people accumulating in that niche, right? So it's like my first place where I do just brainstorming. Oh, that's cool. Type it in, see what the data says. And if you're not in data at all, it's just you're looking at a line and you want to make sure if it's going up or if it's going down, right? So beyond that, let's say if I see something that oh, this is trending, other people like this too, then I'll hop on Google to see what type of products are people selling in this niche. From there, I'll just take a look at, Amazon's usually going to be there, and see if there's any other websites to see what are those products, and could I get access to them. And if you're ever wondering that question, the answer is always yes. You can drop ship basically anything on the internet. Any manufacturers, what do they want to do? They want to manufacture a product. They don't want to sell the product. So basically you can drop ship anything, and maybe we'll leave show notes if people want to learn more about that. But let's say, so I've done that, and now I figured out a couple products. Then I think the work is going into unscalable work, meaning like actually reaching out to people on a one-on-one level to talk to people who are either already doing this or people who I think would be my customers. And I would just have a conversation with them, specifically slide into the DMs on Instagram, and try messaging them about either product or seeing if they bought something for one of the websites I saw, and see what their feedback was. And then after I've gotten enough feedback, and again, you can't scale this part of the process. And I really think it's important that you don't try to scrape emails and try to scale it, because this is you getting really just on the ground floor, talking to your customer one-on-one or your prospective customers to get that feedback, because that's going to really help when you do produce content, pages, funnels, or whatever you're doing, to make sure that it's real and it doesn't sound like marketing, because now you have the passion, so you know a little bit about it, and then you know the customer a little bit, or the prospective customers out there, and see what their pinpoints and problems are. And after that, then how you get traffic, I can talk about that all day. So then the nerdy stuff, the harder part comes of like trying to figure out where that traffic is, where they hang out, and trying to bring them to your website with the right offer, and then testing that. And for me, I have like a super solid test. I call it, I don't have this patented or anything, but I have like a 100 click test. If I can't get 100 qualified clicks to a web page, funnel, or product page, and they do not buy, the idea's out. So like if I can't get 100 clicks, then it's out, because I think the average website conversion rate's like, I don't know, 2%, maybe 1%. So I need 100 clicks, and if I'm not even doing that at that point, then I'm just way off. I need to either backtrack and redo my research, or I need to move on to the next passion or idea.
I'm gonna take this one from from the other side, the non-business side, since we're talking about disparate interests and all these different things that we do, but kind of take my framework and lay it over what he just said, because everything that he talked about in the process kind of matches up with the way that I approach hobbies. So that's one of the questions that you asked earlier. How do these hobbies relate? So there is and I think what Adrian just explained is like there's a minimum amount of proficiency and education that you need to have to start having success in something, or to know whether or not you're going to be successful in that. So, and that initial immersion is really important, that initial research and how much energy you put into the thing out of the gate to kind of find where that line is. Like, okay, I know what this is now. Now, is this for me? Is this going to work? And so, for example, I recently started learning how to salsa dance, as Trevor knows, the Secret Salsa 2017 project, where I learned salsa in secret to surprise my wife, which was fun. And so I really immersed myself in that for about 2 months, spent an inordinate amount of time. I'm in a place now where I can also put some actual financial resources towards that, whereas 10 years ago I did not have financial resources to put towards that, so I had to figure a lot out on my own, which takes a lot longer. So in this particular case, I went straight to an expert who is very good. We immersed, we trained, we did the thing. It was hard. It broke my brain. I felt like my brain was melting. I was very discouraged at the beginning because I'm not a natural at dancing. But after about 40, 50, 60 hours of lessons, practice, actually going out to a club and embarrassing myself a few times, I pushed past it and finally achieved kind of like this minimum acceptable level of proficiency where I now feel confident and I have a foundation for moving forward. And I apply that to a lot of my hobbies, whether that's playing the guitar or theater, singing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is a huge passion of mine, salsa dancing, whatever those things are. There is a minimum level, okay, where it's not going to be enjoyable, right? Until you get to that place, it's actually not going to be enjoyable. So it's that fuel, that passion that kind of pushes you through that first part where it's a little rough, where you're not good at it, where you don't have all the information, you're not sure if it's going to be a success. And then, it's the passion that gets you to that place where you say, okay, we're gonna bail. I did not get one click. We gotta walk away from this, or say, okay, we're gonna go, on this thing. I finally go to the club and I'm like, oh my God, that wasn't awful. That girl didn't roll her eyes one time at me. That's a win, right? You take those small wins and you move forward from there. But I think that the approach is very similar. So that minimum level of education and experience.
I don't know, just to recap in case you missed it, some of the keywords there. So this guy right here, he's doing fighting, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu. He's doing singing. There was a guitar he threw in there. So I think, and I'm speaking for both of us, but one thing that I love to do, you have to do offline and online, is basically I like to try new things, right? And I think that's a really good habit to have because it puts yourself out there in different communities. It makes you uncomfortable to try things. Like one thing I like playing any unconventional sport. Like I'm a big fan of spike ball, which is an awesome sport. I play pickleball and badminton, and like I bet we could sit here all day and like talk about all the things we've tried. The point of trying something is again to try, and you get a whole new feelings of emotions and a way to think, and then that stuff applies in all areas of life. Every single sport I play or hobby that I try, there are pieces of it that have helped my business, and some pieces I don't even realize, but like there's strategies in everything you do. So I think it's crazy to be in a room with so many different things I could learn from everyone here. It's really awesome. So I think if you're looking at what do you do for fun, that's a question I like to ask, and it is disappointing how many people don't have a good answer. Like, oh, fun. Because a lot of people are just going through their day. They go to work, they sit home, they watch Netflix. That's a sad, sad life. Like, you got to go out there and try different things, So it's cool. I feel energized by someone else who is taking those actions and trying stuff every single day. Because I think those are the most interesting people. And if you are looking at maybe, dude, you're right. I need to go out there and try something new. Like the cost to do that is zero. It's just about energy and focus and getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, to riff off that just a little bit further, one is not being the barrier to fun in your own life or the barrier to success in your own life. And I think that's really important. I often get in my own way, and that's something that you have to be able to kind of deal with. Like, get out of your own way, or in some situations, like I can't tell you how many guys I've talked to over the last couple of months, like, oh, my wife loves to dance. I just go sit in the booth and drink beer while she dances with other people. And I love, I'm glad that she really likes it, but I can't do that. And I'm like, no, dude, you won't do it. And so understand the difference between what you can't do and what you won't do. There's definitely going to be a period of discomfort. And I think we have to learn to lean into that stuff and accept it for what it is. And if it's okay, I'm just going to kind of go off. We talked about the things we love to do and the things that we've continued with and have had some success with. So let me talk about some things that I actually did. They're not really business related per se, but things that I used to believe very strongly because I grew up in southwestern PA. It's a very do-it-yourself kind of culture out there. So, I used to do everything. I fixed my own car, renovated my own houses, whatever needed to be done, I did. My uncle's a mason, so he taught me masonry. So I built some walls, did some pointing on my house, all these different things, and it was fun. We renovated a 1790 farmhouse, which was crazy. Seeing the guts of one of those things is amazing. Talk about craftsmanship. Holy moly, it's lost art. But you get to the end of that process where I used to kind of almost like judge people for like, dude, it's just changing your oil. Just change your oil. Like, why don't you just do that yourself? I do not change my own oil anymore. Heck no. I'm not doing that. And so I have also done these things and realized I don't like them. I just because you can do something, even if you can do it well, doesn't mean that that's where you should put your energy and your time. And so I stopped doing that. I will never renovate another house. I promise you that, Trevor. Never. 2 is enough. And, when it comes to cars, I'm kind of like done on that too. It's like Toyota does a really good job fixing cars. So I'm going to let them, I'll stay in my lane, they stay in theirs, and then we can all be happy. So we have to decide where we're going to put our energy for sure. So
one of the things that I heard there was you kind of have to be okay with sucking at something for a while. I was given a talk once, and at the end of it, they're like, all right, what's, if you had one sentence or a couple sentences of inspiration to leave us with, what would you say? And I was just like, first thing that came to my mind, I said it because that's a thing I'm cursed with sometimes. And I was like, just go suck at something. Like, just go suck at something and be okay with it. because that's the only way you're ever going to be great at it, is if you're okay with sucking for a long time until you've earned the ability to be good at it. And I kind of feel like I'm hearing that here. Maybe you guys said it in more, nice terms, but but it sounds like it's true in your guys' lives as well. The other question that popped up while you're talking is, you're talking about like this minimum time frame, and you talked about it with e-commerce. What about in like non-business terms? When do you stop? Like when is it like I'm not going to be an NBA player, and as hard as I try to be an NBA player, it's probably not going to happen, right? I just don't have it. So when do you know when it's time to stop?
Before you get to that understanding of when you know it's time to stop, and I am only going to speak to my experiences as a professional dancer, and I would not call myself a professional dancer now, even though I still do gigs and I still do that. But when I was in that lifestyle, the amount of training that we did was insane. Where we would wake up at like 7 a.m. We'd start our day with insanity. I don't know if any of you guys did that. Insanity. That was our warm up. And then for 8 hours, we would be there training. 8 hours, a whole day. And after that training, then we would go hang out with whoever, and we'd go to a dance club. And like we'd have to dance more. And then we were getting like 4 hours of sleep because by the time we got back. So it's like that is a crazy day. And I would, for anyone that wants to be a professional of something, each sport, each art has its own, rigorous training regimen that they're doing, which you don't realize. So like if you want to be an NBA player, doesn't matter how old you are, like I dare you to try and train like an NBA player, because that you're going to learn a lot. And they're spending so much time and energy, and every single the way you have to change the way you eat. You have to change your what you do throughout your day. Like you have to be weightlifting. Then you have to be practicing 100 free throws. Like every single sport's going to have its own thing. And I only can speak again to dance of what it was like, because I'm not doing that anymore. Like I'll dance, a couple times a week, or I dance every single day, 15 minutes, but like it's not the same. And so I think that first put yourself in their shoes and try to do all the action that person is doing in sports or outside of sports. And then if you're not getting the results through there, if you make it to that stage where you are doing it, you're going to notice a massive improvement in whatever you're doing. That's a guarantee. I don't think you can put that much time and stay at that plateau of your level in anything. That's just dedication, and practice makes perfect. I totally believe in that. But once you put yourself in their shoes, then you'll get to a stage of like deciding, okay, what is it going to take for you to now make it to the next step? Or, are you going to join a minor league team of some sort, and figuring that out? But the first place I think people totally ignore is like the amount of, and they don't realize how much training goes into a professional art or of some sort. So I think first, that'd be my first challenge. And if someone in this podcast ends up taking whatever their passion is and trying it and performing at that levels and can show me proof, I'll help them like get to that next stage no matter what. If I have to call people and like get them on the phone, like I'll do that. But I think that's where most people don't even make it that far. Like, can you go a whole month, 30 days of doing that? Because like that's going to make a drastic change on your perspective of what it takes to become one of those top athletes and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And to the point, of when is it time to walk away, right? I mean, that's like, if you can't do that and sustain that, that's a really good indicator of whether or not you should walk away. And, that has direct analogies to the business world for sure. And I think it comes back to that same place. If you're not in a state where you feel like you are making forward progress as a human being as well, then you're probably in the wrong place. You're doing the wrong thing. And so I think that's always a kind of indicator for me. If I'm not moving forward as a human being, if I'm not, if I feel stuck, then something needs to be assessed and shifted in some way. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to that, but Adrian did a pretty good job, I think.
So I couldn't agree more with everything that you said. Where did this come from you guys? Because there's a lot of, I feel like everybody is capable of doing these things, of putting in the work. I think it's just really prioritizing. But I imagine that there was something that happened at some point in time in your lives, or maybe a few things that happened that really encouraged you to take these risks, go down these paths, to follow those processes. Where did that come from?
So when I was younger, I was maybe what you would call cocky. I can't believe it. Yeah, I was really cocky, and I would talk about things as if I knew the things, right? Because I believed that I could do those things, but I hadn't done them. And I think that's a really important... Do we think that's an important distinction? Yeah, Scott, maybe it is. Maybe you should do the things first before you talk about how awesome you are at them or would be at them. And I think that's something that a lot of people do. So I try to avoid talking about things that I want to do out loud because I know in myself, sometimes folks get the payoff by talking about the thing that they want to do. That makes them feel good enough. They get that kind of gratification. There's like a little loop in the brain. It's like, oh yeah, I could do that. And I'm going to go watch Netflix, right? And they never actually do the thing. So I kind of try not to mention them until I do them. Just make the call. Because the more you talk about it and flesh it out and explore that whole thing, sometimes it can just make sure, I think, just watch and make sure that you're not doing the self-gratification thing through talking. So kind of process that over the last 20 years of my, kind of adult life. And I was fortunate enough to pick a life partner that is like a crematory for cockiness. Like you can't put cockiness in there. It doesn't come out the other side. It's ash, right? It just burns off. And I appreciate you, Christina. She knows it, and you got to go through the fire, to get to the prize, right? And so by putting up, like shutting up and putting up, you develop this experience, right? Whether that's a minimum level experience where you can say, I don't want to do this and walk away, or whether it becomes actually some sort of core competency that you can actually achieve. Well, now you actually have something that you can not, I don't want to say brag about, but the cockiness goes away and confidence starts to replace it. And those are two very, very different things. And when you're young, I think that you can mistake that. I know people who are not so young that also confuse the two. And that's how I've kind of gotten to the place where I am. And, just to be fair about where I am in my professional life, I've gone through, a failed business and then actually building a business and growing a marketing and advertising web development agency and doing very well, selling that, moving on. And now I've landed in this place of where I'm a consultant. And for years I was like, what is a consultant? What do they do? And they're just people who have reached a level of proficiency in their field that they can, step in and help out, they've kind of seen a lot, so it's easier to step into situations and just kind of tell people, help guide them in the direction they need to go, and sometimes do the work, sometimes just tell people how to do the work. And man, it's a sweet spot to be like that. And I would love to reach that level with other things that I do. I'd love to be like, I love for people to come to me and ask me how to salsa dance. I'm like, dude, I couldn't teach you how to salsa dance. No way. Like, you don't want to ask me to do that. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm like halfway there. I'm halfway to that place. And I frame it in terms of how do people do the competency thing where it's like unconsciously incompetent and then you're consciously incompetent, right? That's the level I like to get to, because then you know that you suck and you kind of know what you need to do, right? And then you start becoming consciously competent at things, but you're thinking about it. You have to work at it. And that's kind of where I am with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not quite there with dancing yet. I hope to get to that place. And then when you get to a certain place in your professional life or your hobby life, you become unconsciously competent. It's just kind of, you just got it, right? And I love, you asked what drives. I want to get to that place with some things in my life, whether that's, I have relationships that I want to get to that place with, I have hobbies, and I have professional aspirations where I want to become unconsciously competent, where it just flows and it just happens. But it takes a huge amount of training and investment. Just like we talked about trying to get into the NBA, the amount of time and energy and effort that goes into that to reach that state is ridiculous. On almost anything that you pick something, it's going to take an inordinate amount of time to become a true expert in that.
I think there's some things in life, to answer your question, where that question is completely ignored, and that was dance for me. It's like I didn't care what happened. I just loved doing it so much that I was going to do it no matter what people said about me. If I got one person following, and specifically for 6 months, the only follower I had on my YouTube was my mom. So thanks, Mom. So I didn't care because I loved doing it so much. And there's things in that just make you happy. Now the part of your question of what put the fire in you to go, to keep doing it or pursue it further. For me, after I was done touring with T-Pain and I had my first e-commerce store, failed e-commerce store, I also can level with the thought of where my mentality was like, man, I'm 21. I've already done a lot. And I started telling people, I'm gonna be a marketing director at a big agency, like right out of college. Like, like that's exactly what I'm doing. Cause I got 5,000 followers here, and I've already danced with T-Pain, even though it's completely irrelevant to business. But for some reason I thought I was just gonna make it big in marketing at some big firm. And I applied to like 50 places. And I didn't even hear back I maybe heard back from like one or two. And like on my resume, I even put like in like extra big font, like, hey, I have 5,000 followers, because I thought that was really important. But then through the harsh world of like being realistic, I didn't get in anywhere. And it took me 6 months after I graduated to find a job. And so like, here I was thinking I had it all, and I didn't have anything. I was so naive, and whether it came from arrogance or just not knowing what truly is important to businesses and marketing, like I think I was shook basically. And so I took a job, because I had to take a job, at a call center helping people with their retirement accounts. And it was literally a job where you like clocked in, clocked out. And I got done at 3 p.m. every day. And I thought, man, this, out of all the places like I've been, like I was like on a high, like, man, I danced in front of 100,000 people. I was meeting all these people that I looked up to and listened to. And here I am, like, helping your mom and dad with their 401k. So for me, that right there was like, dude, this is not the end of your story. You don't want to be like a 40-year-old man and be like, oh, I danced with T-Pain. Like, that's the highlight of your life. I need to make sure that was like just the beginning. And like everything I do from this point on, it has to be making it look like that was small. Like, wait what I'm going to see what I'm going to do. So like that put the fire in me, because like it was embarrassing to like talk to people who in college, they watched my whole entire story of like how I was like a beginner dancer and like went to professional in a time of 4 years in college. And then, oh, you must be doing amazing things. What are you up to now? It's like, yeah, I'm doing great. Oh, you got a job? Yeah, I'm working, at a call center. Yeah, so things are great. I'd have I was embarrassed about it. But what I didn't give up on was the fact that just thinking like, this is not it. I'm just going to take this as an opportunity to work extra hard to try to achieve what I really want. So 3 p.m. I'd clock out. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. I just spent all my time trying to learn and grow my YouTube audience even more, trying to work on my e-commerce store and actually make a profit. And then I did that for 2 years, and then that was like probably the biggest hustle point of my life, where I learned a lot of what I know now, because by the end of those 2 years, I think I had 30,000 followers on YouTube, and I was already producing at that time maybe like $1,000 to $2,000 a month on that online store, which was awesome. But I think for sometimes, like, no matter what your experience is, you may achieve success, but I think what I did wrong, well, maybe a lot of people else do, is like they rest on their laurels, or they think, oh, I did it, now I'm done, or like I can use that to do all these other cool things. And it doesn't connect like that if you don't have the right attitude. As soon as I accomplish something now, it's like you got to be thinking about the next one and take from those experiences and grow, versus like, showboat what you did. And I think I did that. And I'm glad I did it, because I'm really stoked where I am now. I still have the same mentality that I have in those 2 years, which is like everything that I accomplish, I want that to be small things I look back, versus like my main talking points of like, hey, what have you done in your life? And I just want to keep growing and growing. And then what I'm really, really stoked about, a project I'm working on now, is I just launched a course called Search Engine Conquest, where I'm now teaching people how to do growth hacking online for drop shipping, for e-commerce using Shopify. So like, I think what I hope one day I'll be able to look back on is like how many lives I was able to change by helping them produce, even if it's just a couple $100 a month, through a passion of theirs. So I'm stoked about that, and I don't know what the future holds, but I think the energy in this room, and if you're catching this energy from the podcast, is like, if you have that spirit to keep trying new things, and then putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, really amazing things that you can't predict will happen. Like, I would have never thought, I went to school in Iowa and I became a professional dancer there. That's unheard of, right? And we could probably share all stories of stuff of really crazy things that are not, we're not in Silicon Valley recording this podcast, and we've all achieved success in some shape or form. So you just keep trying and you have an optimistic look on life, you're going to do great.
So that was a big word, success. So everybody has different ways of defining what that is. And when you're 21 and you've done all these amazing things and you feel like you are a success, and then you kind of lose that success, and then you gain it back and you lose it. That's a rough ride, So I think that my definition of success, and I've got a little graphic here that helps me think, is that at some point in time I realized that what I really wanted in the world is or I guess the connection I made is that for me, money and freedom are so tied together. And I'm not talking about that traditional form of like achieve financial freedom by investing in whatever. I mean, yeah, you need to do that, of course, and be a good money manager, but achieving this place where I have the freedom, the time, because my time for me, my relationships with my family, my relationships with my extracurricular activities and with my business are all important. And so having the freedom, it makes me feel wealthy, right? To have a wealth of freedom to explore these passions and explore these things that I like to do. And some of my passions are business related. We were just talking yesterday about the possibility of starting a B Corp here in Cedar Rapids, and a way to cycle money back into our community and create some jobs here locally. And that has me really excited, and it doesn't feel like work. It feels exciting to be able to shape those things, to create those ideas and see them through. And it doesn't feel like it's something that's going to tie me down. It feels like it's something that's going to liberate and create more freedom, if that can happen. I'm not really sure how else to explain it, but I really value my freedom, which is one of the reasons, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I've never worked with an investor. I've generally done it the hard way, partially because I value that freedom. So people are like, man, dude, if you just get a couple investors on board, this will go so much faster. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It would go a lot faster to have a runway that we could just kind of launch, gear it up, and do what we got to do. And I've chosen the sweat equity road, which is a rough road sometimes, but that's a personal choice, and I certainly don't judge people that work with investors. That's not what I'm saying at all. But anytime I give a little piece of my freedom away to someone, whether that's an employer, whether that's, someone who has some sort of financial power over me or whatever, these sorts of things, I really try to, I don't flourish in those situations, and I don't like them. So I avoid that. It doesn't feel right for me to do that. So I tend to stay out of the way and keep myself, free, I guess. I don't know. That's a really weird thing. I probably should have thought about that one in the shower a little longer before I trotted it out on the podcast. So
yeah, maybe an extra 10 minutes in the shower before your next podcast interview do you good. You guys have both talked a lot about, Adrian, you talked about your failed stores. You talked about a few other lessons that you learned. Scott, you talked about, your attitude improving over a period of time. So I want to talk about like failing in adversity and kind of like, picking yourself back up. What do you do? Like how do you pick yourself back up and try again when, you have a failed store, or you don't get that job that you want, or, maybe things don't work out the way that you plan them to in business? How do you pick yourself back up?
So my first major failure was in 2004. I started a web development company, web design company. I don't know what it was in 2004. What do we call it then? So I had recently moved from the DC area where I lived for 6 years, and where money's, they print it there, I think. And it does feel like it grows on trees. I was part of a community down there where I was a teacher, and I didn't realize at the time that, because I was so young, I started teaching when I was 19 years old, did that for 4 years. I didn't realize that the people I was teaching, their children, and they were all old enough, generally to be older aunts and uncles, sometimes even my own parents in some cases, were watching out for me. They were enrolling their kids in my programs. They were hiring me to do, I always had a computer consultancy on the side that I was always running. And I didn't realize that network or family of people, they were supporting me. They were treating me like their own. I was one of them, and they wanted to see me grow. And I think now that I'm where I am, I enjoy watching people grow up. And I like being the guy that's like, I worked with somebody, I was the first invoice they sent, 001. And I like being the first customer. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you a shot here, guy. Let's do it. And that's a good feeling because it's been done for me. And I recognize that. Well, I moved, back home to southwestern Pennsylvania and opened a business. I was like, I got this, man. I've been killing it in DC. This is fantastic. And I immediately I flopped so hard. We got this great house, and my income went from approaching six figures to like $8,000 that year. Oh, dude, it was brutal, and I didn't even know what was happening. and because I had no perspective. I didn't know that these people were looking out for me in this network, and I was part of a network. Didn't know how to plug myself into a network. And so, that 1 year that I spent off on my own, was just a crazy nosedive and, $60,000 loss, on all this stuff. And that was my college education. I guess you get it one way or another, right? I mean, you gotta get your education somewhere. And buckled down, got a job, hated every minute of it, switched to another job, found that was a toxic environment. Leadership was rough, man. And so I learned a lot through that process, and that was a lot of grit. There was almost no passion involved at that point in my life, and I was really, really down. And but all the while, I knew that I wanted to be free of this, and that was what was driving me in the back of my mind. And so when I started identifying the pieces, there were light bulbs that were going off. Like, oh, prospecting. That's a thing that you can do. You can do lead generation. There are ways to do this. Networking is a thing, and I didn't know how to do any of that, and as I was watching these professionals do it, I was kind of stealing their mojo a little bit, or at least replicating their mojo, certainly not stealing it. And so those little light bulbs eventually kind of shed enough light on the situation where I felt confident to go out and try it again. Also was surrounded by great people. I think that's a really important thing, people who support you and will tell you the truth through those situations and not just sugarcoat everything. That's the worst thing, man. When people just be like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love your apparel, man. I'd buy a ton of that stuff. Like, why do I have so much of it in my garage? So, that combination, but, understanding that resilience is something that can be cultivated. It's something that you can ruminate on and try to develop, and understand that there are cycles in life, professionally, personally, and all those things, and coming to trust that cycle and coming out of that on the other end. And I was there again. When I kind of got out of my last business, it wasn't that the business wasn't going well. It was going very well, and it continues to do well. I'm really proud of my former business partner. He's like crushing it. He keeps going, But I was done. I was no longer in a state of flourishing. So I had to kind of like bounce back up out of that and find my own place again. And now I feel like I found that place again, which is great.
So to summarize, could you maybe break it down? How, like, if you could do like a bullet pointed list, how would you bounce back? Like, if somebody asked you, Scott, I'm going through a tough time. I need to figure out what do I do? How would you summarize them for them?
I'll tell you, in my case, when I was kind of, at the end of ropes, whenever that happens, and you start feeling really discouraged and just super beat up about things, finding somebody that you trust to talk to is really important. And I'm not one, I do have mentors in my life. They are more friends than mentors, but they are mentors. They're people who have led me through all kinds of different things. So, because I personally tend to not. I'm like, I got it. I got this. I can do this. I got this. I'll figure it out. But no, I think you do need to talk to other people. Even if they don't say anything, it can be very helpful. I remember it's crazy. I was friends with this guy for years. I didn't know he was like the CIO of the Navy land operations. He never told me what his job was. I was like, dude, like 50-some thousand employees. It's nuts. And we met after, quickly, I don't mean to gloss over, but in 2014, one of the reasons I left my previous business is because my brother passed away of a drug overdose. And so that was a big turning point in my life. I already was not happy with where my professional life was going. It was time for a change, but that was when all the chips kind of got pushed off the table, and I had to rearrange some priorities in my life for sure. Throughout that process, I went to visit this guy in Maryland. We were chatting, and he described to me what a workaholic looked like. And I was like, oh, this is really painful to listen to. And so he really kind of pointed out a lot of different things that I had been doing that he also had done. He'd been there. And so I think finding someone that has been there that you trust, having an open conversation, hearing what they have to say, and then being willing to kind of incorporate some of those thought processes or open up, and get some help, because sometimes you can't always do everything on your own. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. So I think when you're busted up and down, seek out people and surround yourself with people that are going to support you, not in a sugarcoating kind of way, but like in a real talk, but loving way. So
I feel like I've already shared a couple failures on this podcast, so I'm going to stop those stories. I feel like I'm a loser. No, but in all seriousness, I think through actually my hobbies, I have developed something that's really impacted the way I do business, and is not caring what other people think. what the thing about dancing or any entertainment type of hobby is you have to be in front of people, and that is can be very nerve-wracking. And anytime you're in front of people are going to have not nice things to say about, and most of them you don't hear, but they hear on your back. Now, because I'm a YouTuber, I get like 300, 400 comments a day. So I literally get like 60 crappy comments every day. It's like, you suck. What are you doing? Like, you're so bad. You should just turn off your YouTube. Like, it's like, it gets really bad, right? All the haters out there. So I don't care. I'm really used to it now, but if someone's listening and they're really affected by feedback, that's something that you just have to get over. And everything that was already mentioned, like, those are all things that help, but no matter what, it really is on your shoulders to really just not care what anyone says and put your trust and faith in you. There's a couple quotes that I see every single day, and one of them, it has to do with being the best gift that you can get to others is your best version of yourself. So like if you're taking the pressures from outside, you're not 100%, right? So you got to be 100% of yourself and have confidence in yourself to do that. The other thing that I'll mention, and this is something that's really bad in my field of marketing and being an entrepreneur, is people are obsessed with trying to get immediate gratification on anything they do. And out of anything I've ever accomplished, none of it was ever immediate gratification. Now, in my field, if you scroll through Facebooks and you're part of these entrepreneur stuff, people are posting screenshots of their sales of the day. Hey, look at this. And they'll share some little information, but really the main point they're posting is hey, look how much money I made, right? So it's the thing is, we're used to seeing that success of other people, and then you create something and you don't have those numbers, you don't have a sale on your first day. It's oh, what am I doing wrong? It's we just need to take a deep breath and think. You got to be long term, right? You got your whole life to become successful and accomplish it. And if you put all this work and you launch something and it doesn't work out right away, that is normal. That's the grind. That's the whole process. Nothing I've ever done was immediate gratification. So I think those two things of not caring what other people think, and I am a full believer in that, because now I'm in a zone where I get negative comments every day and they make me laugh now. Whatever, dude, whatever. I used to reply back to all these people. At first I was replying why do you think that? And then I got into a mean stage of dude, shut up. You're an a-hole. Who cares what you think? And then now it's I just laugh at it. So you have to build that self-confidence. No one's going to be able to build that for you. And the other thing is just thinking long-term, because there's going to be a lot more failures coming your way, my way, everyone in this room. A lot more failures are coming our way. But it's just about being trained. Sorry, Trevor. It's oh, crap. No, it's just the truth. So thinking long-term to know that this failure is just part of a journey will help ease of not getting massive amount of email subscribers or likes or comments and all that every single day.
Yeah, a couple things that I wanted to add to that. I think that makes it even the fact that you're going to fail makes it even more important that you pick something that you have some interest in or you like to do, other than I think this is going to make me a bunch of money, or I feel like somebody else wants me to do this, It's because of all those things that you go through, you have to be a little more selective on what you choose to do. And I feel like we could talk all day. I'm really enjoying it, but I need to transition us into the last part of the show, which is, what do you do on a daily basis that you feel like gives you a leg up or gives you an advantage maybe over everyone else or yourself on a normal day?
So, it's funny because I have been living this life that I live now for a while. And there are structures built into that. I have some routines. I have some hard and fast rules that I try to live by as much as possible. Never take a meeting before 10 a.m. I'm not at my best. I need to be my best self. And I know that I just need a little time in the morning to get centered. So having that time for me to center myself, to organize my day, organize my thoughts and how I'm going to approach my day has been very important. That doesn't necessarily, I'm not really a list maker. I rely on my inbox to kind of do that for me. These are my priorities, and even Trello if I have to. I guess that is a list, but kind of just getting ready for the day, looking at the calendar, seeing what's on the plate, and then doing my best to make sure that I'm bringing my best self. If I show up here at Vault, I want to be the best version that I can be. Vault is our co-working space here where we work. Beyond that, I want to make sure that, so inside of my working hours when I'm working, I much prefer a 3 to 4 hour focused burst. I'd rather sprint for 4 hours than jog for 8. That's my preference. So I get my mind right. I find the zone as quickly as I can. And I think that's something you can train yourself to do if you practice enough. So when I come in here and sit down and put my headphones on, and I'm, that I'm not here, 8 hours every day. In those 4 hours, I want to accomplish 8 hours worth of work. That's my goal whenever possible. And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I have to slog through, and just do the thing that needs to be done, and not putting off the things that can come back to bite you later. Accounting, invoicing, any correspondence that just needs to be addressed. Don't put it off. Just like chop wood, carry water, right? That's the old adage from Eastern philosophy. Chop wood, carry water. Just do the thing that needs to be done if it's in front of you. Otherwise, you're going to be, knee deep in emails and you'll just put it off forever. Then in the, once the workday is done, making sure that I separate from that workday, because I used to have a really hard time doing that. Even when you're not at your desk, a lot of times when you run your own stuff, you're always thinking about it. You're always problem solving. But I found that I did my best problem solving whenever I was not consciously thinking about it. I would wake up the next day and be like, oh, this is way easier than I thought it was going to be. We'll go this way instead. And it's a totally different direction than I thought. And so that's, achieved by, in my case, I think just about every evening I've got something going on, whether I'm going to see, my kid perform in something, whether I'm performing in something, whether I'm training jiu-jitsu, whether I'm salsa dancing. I think we might salsa dance tonight, actually, which is great. Having those things that continually feed that passion and not just going home. A big part of it is not going home and sitting down. I think it's good to relax. It's really important to relax. But, man, 3 hours on the couch is so bad for your health. Just like sitting and not doing anything. It's just bad for your emotional state and everything. So I think that's kind of like the loose structure of my day. Almost every day is the same that way, where I stay active and try to focus on those kind of goals and ideals, while maintaining good relationships with the people that I interact with throughout, positive, making a positive impact on the world. So yeah, that's it.
So I definitely follow a morning routine I did not create, but is inspired off a book called The Miracle Morning. Trevor's going to leave the affiliate link in the show notes. And I don't follow all of it, but my morning routine is solid, except for when I travel. I have to work on it. But I wake up at 5. I'm in the gym by 5:30. I work out for like an hour. I make breakfast. And then I read for about 30 to 45 minutes of a book. And then I'll try to work on something that is just related to me. And usually right now in this phase of my life before I have kids, it is businessy. I'm working on a full hour of something that one of my hobbies, startups, Shopify store, something like that, before the grind of email comes in and then takes over your day. So I'm doing all this before 8 a.m. And again, all this is because definitely comes from that book. It's an awesome book, made a huge impact on my life. But a lot of the concepts we talked about today of making sure you do yourself first before you help everyone else. It is I fully believe in giving and making impact, but on other people. But if you're not the best version of yourself, you're going to make a less of an impact on the people around you. I know we've talked about Miracle Morning. I think you may follow it too. The one thing I do not do the meditation part of it, but can I argue that maybe meditation or being in a different state of mind comes from like playing ping pong or playing spike ball or something like that? So, because I am not sitting down, legs crossed and doing that, but everything else I'm knocking out. And I think mornings are super, super important. I think there's arguments for people who are night owls. Overall, it's finding the right place where you're in the right mindset to accomplish done. But I was a night owl, and now I'm a morning person. And I will say, if you're one of those night owls, you should at least try the morning. Don't always just say something without trying it. Try the morning routine. I'm all about morning routines before, and I used to be up a night owl, like on the computer to like 3 a.m. And like I am so glad I made that change. My wife made that change too, so we're getting up at the same time. That's also very hard, because both of us are married. Trevor's not married yet. One day, but you gotta. It's cool to have a routine. It's impossible to have a morning routine, I think, with when one person's laying in bed and then you're trying to go to the gym at 5 a.m. is not going to work. We did that. We had like a talk about morning routines, and now we both are at the gym and doing that. And it's awesome. We're both up. Now, the one flaw maybe about morning routines, like Ashley and I, we both get like 8 hours of sleep. So that means we're going to bed like around 9:30. We're in bed already. So, but
I feel way more productive about my days if I do it right. When I travel, I feel like I get less done. I don't feel I have full energy because I haven't kickstarted my day with, a workout and done me yet. So
to follow up on that, I want to 2 points. One is the exercise component. My wife is actually a huge gym rat. She loves to go to the gym, and we go to the gym together in the mornings as well. That's a big part of our, mental health and physical health routine. On the other end of the day, that's the first part of the day. The last part of the day is reading. That's when I do my reading. And when I was at the peak of running my advertising agency, I had stopped reading for pleasure. I would read a ton for work, taking white papers, whatever I had to do, a lot of writing. And when a friend of mine, actually the guy with the Navy, right? He suggested, he's like, start reading again. You should read for pleasure. I know that's a hobby that you used to love. So I only read for pleasure at night. It's never a self-help, never a whatever kind of thing. It's always just, a place where I can let my mind kind of go and my imagination wander. But I'll tell you this, after not reading for a number of years, I had to teach myself how to do it again. And that was a huge hurdle, and it was very embarrassing for me. That's not that I didn't understand the words on the page. I couldn't keep my focus there, and it was really embarrassing that I couldn't remember what was on the page, and I felt really defeated by that. So I kept working until I got back to my former place where I read. I'm a fairly fast reader, and I'm just chewing through fiction, every night. But I do about 30 minutes to 60 minutes every night before I go to sleep, and that puts me in a good place to get those 8 hours, because I also go to sleep at a really early hour. Salsa night actually kills me. I'm like, really? We don't start dancing until 9:45? That's like 20 minutes before bedtime, guys. This is crazy. But being in that routine, having those routines and those structures, I think is essential. And when I didn't have them before I kind of put them in place, I love that there's actually a formula for that. I'm going to check that book out. I came to my own, routine, which seems to be working, but I think it can always be improved. So I'm going to see if I can borrow some of those ideas.
Man, you guys are making me feel guilty, because I'm like, man, I go to bed around like 11:30, wake up at 6:30. I'm like, man, I should go to bed earlier. But Miracle Morning is awesome. I've been doing that for about a year. I also plug reading The One Thing along with that, because if you take what the concepts from The One Thing, especially the domino effect, like just being like, can I just get up and eat a yogurt this morning for like 10 days? And then my day's a fucking win. That's it. Like I won today if I have a yogurt for 10 days straight. And then it's adding another thing. It's like, okay, well, can I do a push-up today for 10 days? Or can I just drive to the gym? I don't even have to go in. I just have to drive there. Can I just drive there for 10 days, right? Yeah. And then it's like, it's just taking one domino at a time. And then I thought it was like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. When I read it, I was like, I'm like, why can't I just do it all? And then a month and a half, I really dedicated myself to it. And a month and a half or 2 months later, I'm like doing like 10 things every morning. I'm like, damn, this is why I struggled for so long to get this stupid morning routine down. Is because I tried to do it all at once, when it's really like a slow iterative process. It's really not that slow. I mean, 2 months to a really good morning routine is not that long. But so next question, you talked a lot about reading and books. What would you say is the most, so you can pick either one, most impactful book, or if you had to recommend one book to someone that was, at let's say maybe they just graduated high school, just graduated college, they're at the beginning of their journey, what would that book be?
Yeah, so when it comes to books, it's I'm trying to think about. I couldn't even tell you how many books I've read, through my life, where I found something in one of the characters, fiction specifically. I found something in one of the characters that I identified with. I mean, I think there's a reason why people get into various mythical like Star Wars. People love Star Wars, right? And because they see something there that in those lead characters that they identify with or want to identify with. And I think that that's really important. So finding those characters, these fictional characters that have components that you want to grow in your own life. And I know, and I don't know if I would recommend this book. It's not for everybody, but I read a book called Neverness, and then the 3 books that followed called The War in Heaven by a guy named David Zindel, who is a British author. When I got them, I had to order them from the UK. They were the most expensive paperbacks I've ever bought in my life. I'm like, what? £18 for a paperback plus shipping. This is crazy. It was like $19.99 or something like that. It was just nuts. And but the lead character in that was one who really brought me. It was at a time when I was doing a lot of meditating actually, and really studying Eastern thought. And that particular character was something I identified with very strongly. 10 years later, I reread the books. It was a totally different book. I was a totally different person. So I would just encourage people to find genres that they like to read, whether that's fiction, nonfiction, self-help, whatever that is. Find them and be voracious in that, and find the things that speak to them, because you'll always find something. You'll always find threads there. And as long as you're enjoying the process of reading those books, and you look forward to it every day, you will find riches buried in them. Probably one of the most gratifying experiences I've had in reading a book was the first time I read a book in Spanish. I also learned Spanish whenever I lived in Washington, D.C. A friend of mine was gracious enough to help me learn. And I'm not great at it, but I read The Alchemist by Paulo. Yeah, El Alquimista. And it took me a long time to realize that the word pastor does not mean pastor. It means shepherd. So if you're going to read it in Spanish, it's not about a pastor. It's about a shepherd. That whole first chapter will make a lot more sense. But that was a great book about creating your own personal legenda, your own story. And so that was influential as well. I like that book a lot.
Dang, I wish I'm Mexican, 100%. My dad calls me a coconut because I'm brown on the outside and white on the inside because I can't speak Spanish. I can understand it at some point, but I have to pick two books. Sorry, can't stick to the rules. My two books. One, these books apply to all people. The first book is Money Mastered the Game by Tony Robbins, because we're all making money, right? How you spend that money or invest that money is a big deal in the long term of your life. Some philosophies think that you can't save your way to retirement, but I go on both sides. My books are almost contradictory only on that point. Beyond that, they are both in the same pack. But if you know how to invest your money in a long-term way, that is how everyone can retire, or at least be in the position to retire. I don't think anyone in this room is going to ever be retired and just sit on a beach. You know, we're always going to be doing something, but at least be in the position. We can cuss on the show, right? Yeah, where we can have fuck you money, you know, where at least no matter what happens, you can be like, fuck this, I want to do what I want, right? So Money Mastered the Game, awesome book. It is long. I think it's over 500 pages, but if it was short on money, it wouldn't be right. The next book is 10X by Grant Cardone, and why I want to recommend that book is because I think most people don't understand their full capacity of how much they can do in a day and be productive in a day. And really that is doesn't matter what you're doing. It all has to do with what is in your brain, what's in your mind. And I think it can be a combination of things of who you surround yourself by and what you're used to. But if you have a burning fire to accomplish something, you'll be able to achieve way more. And it's all in your head. It's all your mental capacity. Stress is a relative term. There's people who are stressed out doing very, very small things. Some stresses are like a doctor or a surgeon. Like, to me, that's stressful. Anything I do doesn't even compare. But this book is awesome because it helps shift the mindset that you can do way more in a day and achieve crazy goals. Those are 10x goals in one summary is like, how do you, if you want to make six figures in a year, most people have that thought, even though it's very naive. It's like, okay, well, why not achieving $1 million in a year? Because when you just ask that question, this is Tony Robbins' line, but the quality questions that you ask determine the quality of life that you have. So asking that question is going to totally shift what you do and how you think. So amazing books, highly recommend them.
Adrian's been reading my diary. I don't know how you got in, dude, but props to you. So you're very sneaky. All of those things are core to my life. And there's a quote that I was going to butcher, so I looked it up real quick on my phone. And I don't even know if it actually is Thomas Edison that said this, but it was one that stuck with me a long time ago. It was the way I used to be frustrated with others. I'm no longer frustrated. Actually, if somebody wants to go home and watch Netflix at night, that doesn't frustrate me. That's not my problem. I used to take like umbrage to those kinds of things. I was like, no, it's not useful. You know, it's not useful in any way. But the quote is, if we did all the things we are capable of, we would literally astound ourselves. And so I still have this feeling of wanting to know. I don't know what I'm capable of. I feel like I'm capable of more. I'm doing a lot, you know, but I want to see. So I think that's a big driver for me as well. So, I mean, yeah, props to you for framing that so beautifully. I think that was super inspirational for me. I was like, yes, all that stuff.
Yeah, I've read the Money Master the Game book. I haven't read 10X. I'll have to check that out. And El Alchemista, as I butcher my 40% Spanish fluency. Yeah, The Alchemist. I would highly recommend The Alchemist too. I think I've probably plugged it in just about every show so far. So last question, what message would you like to leave the audience with today?
This is fairly simple, and it's such it's like a beaten horse, right? We're just going to beat it over and over again. But this idea of process versus product, it kind of came up. There was a theme of that all the way through about how people look at the product that they want and they focus so much on that, and they kind of get irritated at the process. It's taking too long, or that they have to do all this work to get there. And it's really the process. You need to love the process at least as much, if not more, than the product. In fact, I found in my own situation, in my own life, that you have to be willing to walk away from the product. Like, don't love it too much. It's almost like kill your darlings, right? In writing, you have to be willing to kill your darlings. Sometimes in your business life, or even in your real life. Sometimes you have to walk away from relationships or situations that just aren't working. And so, understanding that process, owning it, loving it, sometimes embracing the grind, understanding that you are capable of a lot. You can do this when you're feeling downtrodden, but also understanding when maybe that grind feels like a grind for the wrong reason. And maybe you're not doing it right, or you should be in a different place. So, but it is about process. And so you have to trust the process. It'll work for you if you just give it time.
Coming out of the blue with this one, call your mom and dad every day and tell them that you love them. And all the people that you love, make sure you tell them. Because right now, everyone, if we ask them, do you tell them enough in this room? I don't. So those are the people in your life, whether it's your parents or your wife or your children. I mean, we can all say, what's the one inspiration besides ourselves we're doing it. We're all doing this for them. So make sure that you take the time and energy to let them know about that.
Guys, I want to say thank you for coming on to this episode of The Formula. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you want to reach out to Adrian.
30 days ago, I launched a course called Search Engine Conquest. It is for people who have the aspiration to start an online store and grow your store using paid strategies through paid ads in a safe way. For those who are in that space of trying to be an entrepreneur, the skill set to try to drive your buyer to your website and get them to take out their wallet and make a purchase is very, very hard, can take a lot of time, and is very expensive if you don't know what you're doing, because you're paying for ads. You want to make sure for every dollar that you spend, you make at least that dollar back. So my course will help those people to teach that. Otherwise, if you want to learn how to do the robots, you can check out youtube.com/Brambillabong. And then my course is searchengineconquest.com. If you have questions about anything we've talked about today, I am an open book. Feel free to hit me up, and good luck.
And this is how you can get a hold of Scott.
So in my current incarnation as a business person, probably the best way to interact with me would be to come to Salsa Night on Wednesday nights at La Cantina in Cedar Rapids on 2nd Street. That's actually not a joke. Or come train with me at Tipping Point Jiu-Jitsu. That's a really fun thing. Or see me at the gym in the morning as well. I'm in a professional place right now where I'm actually not seeking new clients, so that's great. And I've got some things going on right now, but I love to meet new people and talk to them about this kind of stuff. These kinds of things are extremely energizing for me. And today's going to be an even better day than it already was because of this conversation. So I love having those conversations with people and hearing about what others are doing.
Like I said, thanks again for tuning in to this episode of The Formula. My name is Trevor Carlson, and to leave you with a short quote from Tim Ferriss, you are not alone, and you are better than you think. I look forward to you tuning in next week. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this week's show. I want to say thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Formula. Big thanks to Scott and Adrian for showing up and having a good conversation with me. If you'd like to find any of the things that we discussed in the show, just check out the show notes where you can find links to Adrian's course. Also, I can't give you a link to go salsa dancing with Scott, but I threw his LinkedIn up there if you'd like to reach out to him in that way. On another note, if you think you would like or you might enjoy receiving some other tidbits of information from us, such as guides, maybe some ebooks, some other podcasts, some newsletters, announcements, things like that, go ahead and head over to helixacademy.co to sign up today. That's all for this week's show. My name is Trevor Carlson, and I look forward to you tuning in next week.